welcome back. I've talked a lot on this channel about hand fasting ceremonies and talked about how I want to have a hand fasting ceremony at my wedding, but I realized that I've never really gone into any kind of depth about how you might go about having a hand fasting ceremony. So that's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to give you some tips, or really just some things that you need to keep in mind, things that you need to be concerned about as you're planning your hand fasting ceremony. So we're going to be talking about cords and ribbons and scripts and all that good stuff today. So if this is helpful for you, please remember to like this video down below, and then let me know what you're planning to do. Let me know in the comments down below if you're planning to have a hand fasting ceremony and how you're planning on doing it. Okay, let's just jump right into this then. Next to me here, I have my cords that I've been working on recently, hand fasting cords that I made as part of a video that I'm going to be releasing really soon on how to make your own DIY hand fasting cords, because I fell in love with hand fasting cords on Etsy, but they would cost like $100, so I just went and made my own. So if you like these, I will be showing you how to make your own really soon. They're really easy to make, and yeah, so we'll talk about cords in just a sec. Oh, and what is a hand fasting ceremony? If you're not familiar, it's just a really simple tradition that can be an entire wedding ceremony in itself, or it can be part of a wedding ceremony, like in addition to the ring exchange. And essentially it's just when two partners put their hands together and then their hands are tied together, not really tightly, but like symbolically tied together with ribbons or strings or cords, and some beautiful words are spoken. And it's actually where the phrase "to tie the knot" comes from. I believe this is originally a Celtic tradition, so it's still very popular in some parts of the world and in certain subcultures. But when you take a look at a lot of like wedding blogs and stuff like that, I still feel like hand fasting ceremonies are not prominently featured at least in North America. So anyway, I just think they're really beautiful because of the symbolism of this, and the photos look really beautiful. There's something a little bit more intimate, I think, than just a simple ring exchange. So if you're on the fence about doing a hand fasting ceremony, I would say definitely go for it. And from all of the research that I've done, this is not closed to anybody. Anybody can do a hand fasting ceremony regardless of your religion or lack thereof. It's kind of open to everyone and anyone, and you can change the wording and add this however you want. So that leads me to my first tip or thing to be aware of. It feels kind of weird calling these tips, but like thing that you need to be aware of as you're planning your hand fasting ceremony, and that is to write your own script. Of course you don't have to. If you live in a place where there's officiants who are kind of professionals at this and already know what they're doing, that's great, but I highly recommend writing your own wedding script, and especially writing the hand fasting part of your wedding ceremony script. And the reason for this is that I just think wedding scripts that are written uniquely for a couple are obviously more personal, and they're just a lot more fun to watch. If you're not a writer, don't worry, fear not. You can take an already written hand fasting ceremony script and you can just adapt it. You can just tweak it a little bit. And I have written a script. I've written a hand fasting ceremony script that you can totally steal and just like insert your own names into it, and I'll link that down below. It's a PDF and it's just super easy to follow, so just steal that. So the second thing you want to be thinking about is when to put your hand fasting ceremony, at what point to put your hand fasting ceremony into your wedding ceremony. So you might want to do something like this if you're going to be combining your hand fasting with a ring exchange. And the reason for that is the ring exchange will probably be like the big event in that case, and like the moment you're leading up to. So it's nice to do your hand fasting first, or sometimes just like a simple version of a hand fasting, like a celebration of the hands. And that's really when you don't have a cord or a ribbon, but there's like a nice, almost like poem that the officiant will say as you guys are clasping your hands, and it's just called a celebration of the hands. If you do want to do this, I also have a really cute, beautiful celebration of the hands script that you can steal, which I'll also link down below. The third thing you're going to want to consider is whether or not a hand fasting ceremony is legal where you live. This is going to depend on the city or the state or the province or the country where you live. In some places, a wedding fasting just isn't considered legally binding, in which case you would have to combine it with a vow and ring exchange, or do like a symbolic hand fasting ceremony in conjunction with those other things. So just generally do a little bit of research around the legality of a hand fasting ceremony and decide whether or not that even matters to you, if you're okay with doing a symbolic hand fasting ceremony in addition to all the other stuff at your wedding. And of course, that's going to be related to the fourth thing I'm talking about now, which is finding your officiant. As you're deciding who your officiant is going to be, you kind of have a few different routes here. You can go to like a professional hand fasting officiant if that's a thing where you're from or where you're getting married. Or you can go to a person who's used to performing weddings but who doesn't necessarily know much or anything about hand fasting ceremonies and just ask them if they're cool with also doing a hand fasting ceremony. Or you can have a friend or family member get ordained or like legally verified to perform a wedding ceremony and just also teach them how you want them to do your hand fasting ceremony. So if you're interested, what we were planning on doing in our June wedding, which has since been postponed, was to have my brother do most of our wedding ceremony and then to have my aunt, who's a witch, do the hand fasting part of our ceremony. So to kind of have two officiants, I guess, but totally do what works best for you and what works best for where you live in the world. Now the fifth and sixth things on my list are pretty fun because they're about the ribbons and cords. Number 5 is to choose what kind of knot you want to tie. So do you want to simply like take the ribbons and just sort of like lay them on your hands like this, something like this, which is fine. It can be very simple like that. Or do you want to do something a little bit more complicated, like an infinity knot? Maybe you've seen some other videos on YouTube where the officiant lays the cords in a certain way so that when the couple like steps away from each other, they have a knot that's formed and then they keep this knot in their home. So it's a good idea to decide just like what kind of knot you want to do, because that's going to determine number 6, the sixth thing to think about, which is what kind of cords and ribbons you want. So if you want to do an infinity knot or one of those more complicated, not really complicated, but more complicated knots, then you're going to have to use a specific kind of cord, kind of like those cords that you have for graduation, something like that. But if you're doing something a little bit more gentle, you can, like, I don't think you could do a really forceful knot with something like this just because the ribbons and cords might get messed up. Just, you have to make a few decisions just aesthetically about how you want your cords or your ribbons to look on the day of your wedding. As far as what length they should be, you probably want your cord or ribbon to be at least 1 meter long, but no more than 2 meters long, so that it's not like getting all tangled up and knotted when you're trying to tie them. For colors, you might want to choose colors that are special to you, that look good together, that have a particular meaning. And most people, I shouldn't say most, a lot of couples choose to do 3 cords, even though you can choose however many you want. But with 3, like, I would choose 1 cord, 1 color to represent me and my family. My partner would choose 1 to represent him and his family, and then 1 cord to represent our union together. So ideally we would choose 3 cords, 3 colors of cords that look really nice together or that have special meanings to us. The 7th thing is actually really fun as well, and this is to choose representatives who are going to present the cords on your wedding day during the wedding ceremony. And this is a really fun way to involve more family members or friends in your wedding who maybe didn't get to do a reading or be in the wedding party or something like that. So essentially you'd be like, Brittany's brother, Brittany's sister, or Brittany's mom will present the cord from her family. Please step forward. Just like a really extra cute, nice way to involve somebody who didn't have a place in the ceremony otherwise. Number 8 on my list really is a tip. This is to go watch as many hand fasting ceremonies as you can handle on YouTube, like real live wedding hand fasting ceremonies, so that you can kind of get an idea of what they look like. Go watch some on YouTube and determine what things you like about them and what things you don't like about them, and things that you can steal from those weddings. Number 9 is also a super important tip, and that is to practice with your partner and your officiant so that there are no surprises on your wedding day. Of course, you'll probably be having some kind of run through or rehearsal anyway, so make sure you actually physically do the tying of the hand fasting. There's logistics involved and it can be confusing if you guys have like never actually touched the ribbons and gone through it speaking the words from the script together before. So just do a run through and don't have any surprises on the day of your wedding. Finally, number 10 is not a big deal, but this is just to think about what you're going to wear. So for most things, this is not going to be a big deal, but I was trying on a wedding dress from Lulu's that I loved that had gigantic bell sleeves. And if that if I do a hand fasting ceremony with those, I'll just have to kind of be aware of my gigantic sleeves getting in the way. So just a really small thing to consider as you're planning your hand fasting wedding ceremony. So remember, please feel free to use that sample script down below if you need to, and to drop any questions down below if you have any for me. Also give us some ideas, because I'm definitely not an expert on this at all, and I would love to hear what any of you, all of you, have to say about hand fasting ceremonies. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck with everything, and I will see you next week. Bye!